And welcome back. It's the beginning of the second hour. We have about an hour of a good discussion with my guest this evening. It's the State of the Nation address. We had our own State of the Nation observations here to make, and we're going to pick out some of the areas that the President spoke to. Charles Owino, the Director General Government Communications Center, Beatrice Elachi Dagoretti, North Member of Parliament, and Alenga Torosterdt, who is a Governance and Policy Analyst. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I guess we have to go back to where we stopped, but I'd like to ask this question. Charles, Kenyans have been agitating for more than 2 months since the issue of Adani and Amenya and all these things came up. It only took an indictment, and the president has done nothing. It only took an indictment in New York for the president to act. Why did it have to take this long? Because that's the question Kenyans are asking. We have been telling you the same things that the US has done. Why didn't you listen to us and take us through this?
First of all, we must ask ourselves, where was the indictment done? Was it done in Kenya? No, it was done in the US. We were not in the US. Whatever could have been discussed were rumors. But today, at least something came up that was tangible, that people could rely on. Mm-hmm. Yes.
That is a simple answer?
Yes.
Just because the indictment was done in the US?
No, it's simple. You see, Adani is not a small company, it's a big company. And it has done work all over the world. So ordinarily, somebody would not have been so much worried about Adani. But you see now, when it comes that it has been indicted, and the reason for indictment is corruption, then it traces a lot of
bribery and fraud.
Yes.
Up to 34
so I don't think we should have a lot of questions out of it now that a decision has been made by the executive.
No, we'll ask all the questions we want to ask. Did it have to take this long for the president to realize that this has been because that's what Kenyans are talking about, Mr. President. We told you.
No, but thank you, Kenyans, that he has understood you told them, and for him to now face it and say no. I think sometimes, you see, the problem with Africa, Ken, is that when I resign, I am weak. When I face and say I have done wrong, you crucify me. Even Jesus himself questioned that. So sometimes if we are serious in terms of agreeing you've done wrong, I have come forward, I've said, yes, we have done wrong as a government and we have cancelled, then the next thing Kenyans should be asking is that, fine, you have done well, you've cancelled this. We are moving forward because we need an airport that is an airport that any other person, when he walks in, will feel this is an airport like the way Rwanda has, even the one Rwanda has now. When you walk in, you feel it's an airport. You feel you're in Europe. That's what we want, because we are saying, in among East Africa, surely, Kenya deserves better things than any other country. The way, first of all, we sacrifice, we tax ourselves, we do all the things. So that is what Kenyans should be now saying, fine, you have finished, but we want to see a better airport.
Okay. Kalonzo Musyoka says that it's not just enough that the president has cancelled the Adani deal. He's also saying, why don't we relook at Apiero, for example, which is involved in the health superhighway, digital superhighway. Is that where we should go next? Because I know, gentlemen and lady, you want to talk about what happens going forward, but do you think we should dig deeper even to other involvements of Adani?
Well, I thought when we've cancelled Kentraco and the airport,
yes,
it means that anything you're involved in as Adani for now in Kenya.
But the president was specific on the two, Beatrice.
Well, specific for the two, but it is important to just look at, so far you are doing this. Because one of the things, and I have said, is that we also have to accept, we agreed within that as a country, we shall respect the international treaties that we have, we shall respect the international laws that we have, and so just look at it, so that it doesn't also put you into crisis going forward.
Okay.
And anyway, after they have been cancelled, then it means in some of these international jurisdictions that you are in, and maybe your monies are there, then you'll find yourself not having, because your monies will be freezed or done something based on the international laws of you've been found, you in corruption. So for me, I'll just say it's important for us as a country. If we have agreed that is the way we are going, it is painful, yes, but we have to respect and see.
Okay.
But if indeed those projects were done before and they have moved, as I said, let us not wash ourselves. I mean, Kenyans, we behave as if, and God forgive us, as if we are very good people. We are not. We are inculcated into corruption, all of us. We have a vice in us that we need to rebuke from ourselves, starting from even bringing a pen from China that was supposed to cost a shilling. You will sell it at 100 shillings, and then I'll throw it in 1 month. And you want to stand here and say, oh, I am clean as paper here. All Kenyans, we have a problem. Let us get out of it.
Alenga, you have to speak to this. How far do we go with this, especially with the involvement? This is a big company that might have its hand all over the place. How far can we go with it?
From where I sit, Ken, the president simply saying that he has cancelled the deal is not enough. We want to see steps that follow, and we also want to see people taking responsibility, because if you look at JKIA, it's a critical national infrastructure. It's not just any other small thing that somebody wanted to do, but he has integrity issues. We are entrusting foreigners with things that mean a lot to us, things that are almost our heritage, but then when it goes wrong, we don't want to interrogate the process that led us to this shameful moment we are in and say, who bore great responsibility for this? If Kenyans on their own could check out and see the integrity issues about Adani and raise them on social media platforms for months, and the government wished away this and could not listen to anyone.
But who brought tangible evidence? So is asking who brought tangible evidence that the government could have acted on?
Of course, the information that Kenyans have been sharing on social media is information that is captured in international press. It was not something they were manufacturing on their own. And if we cared for our country, therefore, why don't we interrogate that point before going to the step of signing up something? Today, if government wanted to hire me, they will look at even what I said on this show and say, oh, this one is not fit for government. But then a foreigner can come with all that incredibility and still sail through our processes. So it's not enough to say that government is wrong, but it goes deep down to us interrogating ourselves as a country. What do we stand for? What do we represent? What do we want?
So you're agreeing with Beatrice, there's a inherent problem in us as Kenyans.
And as you know very well, Ken, the fish rots from the head. If we do not have leadership from those that have been assigned those particular dockets to cross-check and ensure that they are giving us something that is foolproof. Who are we as normal citizens to come and change things? If the political class has turned around everything, there's a politician today who said a very shameful thing. He said, Adani in New York is not Adani in Nairobi. And that is a leader you have elected to be able to check out things for you. He sits in parliament. He does oversight. But then he says, if I misbehave in the United States of America, I can come here and just be nice, be a nice person. A worm does not dance. That is its own way of walking.
Oh, we know.
Yes, I've heard him. First of all, I cannot tell whether there is any other project that Adani is undertaking apart from airport and Kentraco. But in event there is, then the only challenge that would be is, have you signed a contract with them? Are they already in operation? In case there is, that would bring other legal challenges that would be addressed. And I think that is why the president picked on what I think is obvious that has not been done and has not been signed for. But you see, as much as fish rots from the head, but in governance, it's not that way. In governance, the common mwananchi,
from anywhere.
let me tell you, the common mwananchi bears the biggest responsibility, because it is the common mwananchi that votes us into offices, is the common mwananchi that does a number of things. You know, many a times, as Beatrice said, that we have inherent problems. We are so tribal, and even when you leave tribe, even when we are in our own tribes, we are so, nepotism is so much, and so on. We go to an extent of even the village. You start talking about your clans. So we have a problem. Okay. We must agree there is a problem. So what I can say is that whatever has happened. But equally, as much as it may look careless, it can be true that what somebody has done in another country, you know, it also depends on your mechanisms. You may find that if problem with somebody is corruption, the question will be, are you also admitting corruption or not? But so an ordinary person would imagine, if this person would be corrupt in the US, what about in our own country where we are complaining about corruption?
Maybe, Charles, we should ask ourselves, what if it was a local contractor who stole money from Nandi County, then he's looking for work in Nairobi County? We would not give him that contract.
You know, it is within the jurisdiction.
Yeah, we would not give him that contract. We'll say,
only if it comes to light.
Let me now show you how Kenyans do it. So I'm in Nandi County.
Yes. As an example.
No, it's an example.
Yes.
But it happens. Yeah. It's in reality. I'm in Nandi County. I'm in Bungoma County. I'm in Nairobi County. I have different contracts. What I have mastered is how to fill all these tenders. And I'm able to use company A. This is one person. He has 750 companies. They work across the country, and they are able to fill. And if you try to touch, immediately you are taken to the procurement board, and you are told, this is the lowest bidder. Proceed. That's Kenya.
Wamejipanga.
Ai sana. Takwambia.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to ask this, unless someone has this. Have we considered the implications of this cancellation? Have we considered that? Have we considered the political risk as a country we run? Is the government of Kenya insulated from this cancellation, and how? And who ultimately bears the cost?
Kenya.
But you know, Ken, we have to remember something that we were told in the parliament sitting when the matter of Adani first came to public. We were told that Kenya did not express, did not send an RFP, a request for proposal. It's Adani who sat somewhere, and out of their generosity, they felt Kenya has a bad airport, we can go down there and fix. So clearly, if this is something that was initiated from them, then I don't think Kenya should have a bigger implication, because as we were told, if that is true, but what I believe is there is individual responsibility that will arise from that between Adani and his connectors here and there. But then as a country, I do not think if what we were told is true, that Kenya never sent out an RFP requesting for any proposal from anyone. But Adani, out of their own motion.
How did they even know?
Yeah, those are some
that's possible. How did you know there was opportunity in my office?
Well, I don't know what he's talking about.
No, you can always know. You can always know that there's an opportunity somewhere. Either
inside information trading.
Yes, that is true. Yeah. Or you can look at the status of a country and say,
you're walking into the airport and you don't like it.
People make proposals.
If you travel out of this country most of the time, let me tell you my simple story. Just the other day, when I traveled to UAE, and I'm at the airport, so 2 months before then, there are those two very nice cameras to capture your image when you get into DXB, right? Then 2 months later, they have digital ones. I was like, why can't they even donate the other ones to our airport? That is the feeling you get.
Yes.
That is the feeling you get, exactly.
Yes.
Anyway, that is Adani. and it is done. So.
Owino doesn't like to comment about this. Let me go to Beatrice. Because I asked several questions, the implication of this cancellation, and I'd like to read for you Section 41 of the Public-Private Procurement Act, right? So Section 41 is about due diligence that Beatrice spoke about. So it says, due diligence on privately initiated proposals. The Directorate, in coordination with the contracting authority, shall, before commencing an evaluation of a privately initiated proposal, conduct due diligence to confirm that the private party is, one, has not been debarred by any other country or any international organization from participating in public-private partnerships or similar arrangements, B, is not corrupt, has not engaged in acts of corruption, and has not been sued or convicted on account of acts of corruption. C is about insolvency. My question as a lawyer, Beatrice, I want to ask you this. Does this now preclude Kenya? Are we at a safe place now that we've discovered this information after fact? Because that's based on my question, the implication of this cancellation. Does it preclude us from responsibility? Because suddenly this fresh information has come, because the law says shall before commencing an evaluation. It doesn't say post, because we picked this action post the fact.
Well, shall before, as a country, they will have different ways of defending themselves. As a country, they will say, when we started the process, this information was not in public. And anyway, when you're doing international trade, standards are very clear. You do not rely so much on, or you can rely on mainstream media and all that with clear facts and information, and somebody has to take. Maybe at that time, that information was not there. And maybe at that time, the US was still also doing its investigation. So also the US was very clear knowing this is an international company. You cannot just throw in issues until you get clearly what they have done. And I think that is why they've done their due diligence in terms of following through what Adani has done, who they have bribed. So when they are going to court, they are very clear what they are going to court. Now for us, we did not know anything about it, so you're just doing
it. Or we blocked our ears.
I don't know now whether they blocked their ears, but more importantly, somebody will tell you at that time, before even members of parliament started coming on media, senators complaining about it, remember the process had really gone, and everyone was questioning, why can't you bring this process into parliament? But they just continued and continued. But then more importantly, as you say, we have two things that we must look at. And you remember I started by saying, you must ensure how you exit in this contract. And you can use our laws now. What will safeguard Kenya is our law of PPP. That whether you start or post, the moment you have said you bribed, then we have a right as a country to stop you. Because if you are doing that in a country like the US, then what happens to the third world countries that are coming up?
You can imagine.
You will influence, you will in fact misuse, influence in a bad way, and even try to decide, you can decide to stay with the airport, sorry to say. Because if you have all those powers to do it in the US, here you won't care. You won't care. You'll take us for granted. And so that's why I was saying, we can blame the president. We can say all this. But we should thank God that we have cancelled this. Now we should ask ourselves, going forward, how are we dealing with them to exit completely and to now bring in parliament? Because when you now exit, definitely you have to table in parliament. You cannot tell me the president will read, hand it over to us, and now the minister has just one thing. You must table now how the contracts were, so that we look at the exit clause, and we agree, and we table and say, we have now removed completely Adani, blacklisted Adani in Kenya. You cannot do a project again.
Charles, I know you're trying not to speak to this topic. You really need us to move ahead to the president's speech, but I need to ask you this. There's this tendency government, even the former president, Uhuru Kenyatta's government, of hiding documents. There's one that we were promised for the longest. Was it SGR? Yes, in Mombasa. I remember in December of 2018, my former colleague Mark Messiah asked the president, and he said, you will get it, we'll give it. He retired without seeing that document. These documents on Adani, for example, when the Jomo Kenyatta, the Aviation Workers Union, asked for this document, Alfred Mutua sat here and said, concentrate on the human resource aspect. Don't look at the other things, right? And until, I think it was Kotu, SG, who intervened, and they were given sections of that document. So as at now, Charles, we don't even know the content of this document, and yet we have Article 34, if I'm not wrong, of the Constitution, on the right of information. How do we balance these interests?
We are lucky that the president has cancelled this process compared to the SGR one, which I think was not cancelled, and the president retired without cancellation. But I think this one has been cancelled, and there must be good reasons for cancellation. And it is my prayer that we will not leave it at that level of cancellation, that investigations will be carried out. And if people are found gullible, having been involved in this, then they'll take responsibility.
The people along the chain that approved this?
Yes. Then they should be able to take responsibility. That is my prayer.
Okay.
But I can only pray that it is done. Why should we say so? So that in event that there was corruption or something in between, then we can be able to deter that kind of action in future. Okay. And the only way is when action is taken. So I think it's not going to be left at the level just because it has been dismissed. But I think most importantly, we'd have to investigate using investigation agencies to get to know what actually happened and who is responsible.
How did we get here?
Because I don't think the president will also accept to be embarrassed on some of these issues.
No.
Alenga?
I think there's an interview yesterday with the new Treasury CS, and he says the model that was engaged with Adani was not a PPP, but it was a PIP, which gives them a leeway to exit the contract at any point. I don't know how true that is because we've not seen the length and breadth of the whole document, but I hope and I equally pray, like Charles is praying, that that document is real and the PIP model that is different from the PPP is actually what is on the table, and that may be help the country from getting into an unnecessary compensation.
Do you think, Alenga, this action by the president vindicates Nelson Amenya?
It does, to a very large extent. It does vindicate Kenyans who've been making noise on social media. It does vindicate Kenyans who have written about this and who have tried to give their views, and those views fell on deaf ears. Ken, the problem that we have in this country is that we have a government that reasons like a traditional medicine man. You know, when you go to a traditional medicine man, they have a solution for every disease you say you are suffering from. So if we had a government that takes time to think, okay, what are people saying? What are other views that we can bring in and make and give a solution that cuts across? But we cannot perpetually think that government is right, rule number one. Rule number two, government is right. Rule number three, if you think government is wrong, refer to rule number 1 and 2. That cannot be the way we are running things. Because
but do you think the government can run when everyone speaks about, everyone has their opinion? Everyone can say something.
The government is for the people. The way the government looks at information and sieves it and says, this one has written bad things, we're going to abduct them. Why don't they also why don't they also look through and say, this one has written very good things, how can we adopt them? We cannot have a government that is just reactionary about everything. You are leading people that put you into power. And we are living in the 21st century, the age of information. Okay. Today you will know virtually everything about the US, and you have not stepped there. So when we speak, when Kenyans ventilate on issues, can we have a system that tries to understand what is it they are talking about? If we had not known this, how can we tap into this information and do our own research and come up with a formidable output, then tell Kenyans, well, this is what you said, this is what we have found out.
Okay.
I don't know whether he's indicting government or executive. Because government is wide. When we confuse government to mean maybe president or maybe, there's a difference.
All that is...
she's here. She's not... She's government.
She's government.
Well, you see the problem.
Exactly. My understanding of government is all those bodies. Remember the same MPs who are supporting Adani and even trashing what Kenyans were saying are the ones who are clapping today. And you look at them and wonder, you have just realized it now, a few minutes after 3 p.m.
No. Now let me say this. I think the people who have really criticized Adani are members of parliament. So please, starting from Senator Onyonka, you cannot come here and say, again, they are the ones who are clapping. They were to clap because they have gone a long way to tell government this was a wrong thing. But
some people, Beatrice, who are clapping when the president refused to assent to the finance bill 2024, which they had just passed.
We never clapped, but on the 25th of June,
Senator Onyonka is just one person who stands in the midst of all.
I think Elachi has done it, Sifuna has done, many of us. And by the way, this is the first time from the time I refused, I'm discussing again Adani.
Yeah.
But anyway, having said that, is that I have come to realize it's not about what we do right or wrong in Parliament. Because when the sword comes, it comes for all of you. On 25th, nobody cared, those who used to fight for saying no on the finance bill. So Kenyans must also decide, how do we want our country to move forward? And with our constitution, that's why we get confused and we find ourselves, we forget that head of government is who? We normally think head of government is the president. Arms of government is the legislature and the judiciary. We are all in government. And then you find yourself again head of state. It means you become like the king. Head of state. That's when you receive the ambassadors. That's when you are receiving this. So sometimes our own constitution confuses you to ask you, who is the president?
I have never understood who is the government personally.
Exactly.
Serikali ni nani?
Serikali ni the arms of government zenye ziko ndani ya hiyo government.
Serikali ni nani?
Ni sisi wote.
Hata wananchi.
That's why and we run away. And we need to ask ourselves, why did we take a presidential system when our minds are so set in a parliamentary system?
Even the government speaks about a government.
Yeah.
Alenga. The government, the CS standards speak about the government.
But you see, Ken, it is basically like our legislature, which has overwhelmingly failed, and they lead us to that kind of thinking. If we have a bad finance bill,
have failed, but he will
if you have a bad finance bill,
he's there.
If you have a bad finance bill and you pass it in parliament, then after passing it brings problems, and it is the president who comes to say, well, I have decided with what I have seen, I shelve the finance bill. Then you come and support Adani. We have had many members of parliament speaking about Adani loudly and saying how this is good. There are even those who mocked Kenyans and told them, when you get to an extent where a member of parliament calls our airport a kiosk, you have a kiosk and someone else has decided to come and put in his money and you're chasing him away. I mean, those are the kind of people we are thinking we are dealing with.
That's an individual person.
Then it takes the president to come in the State of the Nation address to say, I have cancelled Adani. So where would we look most?
No, you look at the president, who is the symbol of unity of the country.
But
and the other thing I would say is that when an individual comes and speaks, when I'm speaking here, I'm speaking me on my opinions.
You're not parliament.
I'm not parliament.
But you're backed by voters of Dagoretti.
No, I'm backed by voters of Dagoretti. And therefore, I'll have to speak on the interests of the people of Dagoretti.
And they sent you to Parliament under Article 1, and you're speaking on their behalf. They've donated that power tonight. So you're speaking for your 300,000, 400,000 voters.
Well, that is Dagoretti. But I don't know the interest of Northeastern. And that's why sometimes Northeastern might have an interest that I will refuse, that interest does not come. It affects Dagoretti North, and therefore I don't want it.
But that withstanding, Is there a space for what is right?
Yes, of course. And that's why a few of us goes to what is right for the country. That's why sometimes I'll stand here and look at the country in my eyes and ask myself, what is right for the country? Is it what my party is saying? Is it what is right for the country? Because I have to also balance that. It is politics.
Yeah.
Politics. And it's not just here. I have seen in the US, I don't know why we are pretending here in Kenya. Look at that election that has just been done in the US and tell me whether Democrats and Republicans. I think that's how the country should be run, because that's how we decided our governance is, and we borrowed from them.
Okay.
So sometimes it's very cutthroat. And that is why even a Democrat won't look what is good for the US when it comes to the Republicans are in power.
Okay. You wanted to say something. I need to graduate this conversation now.
No. I rest my case.
You rest your case. All right. Let's look at what the president said today, because I think the president had a very good ground today. When he began, he sounded very confident of his speech. It was a little longer than the first State of the Nation address. I remember when he concluded and we're used to Uhuru's pages. We were like,
at least he went 1 hour.
Yeah, he went 1 hour this time round. The other one was like 40 minutes. So he spoke about money in our pockets, transition of the education sector development. He spoke about democracy, human resource freedoms, all those things, public policies. My interest, however, is what Kenyans are suffering most. Kenyans are broke. So we have 2.7% inflation, the highest in, the lowest, in 17 years. In fact, some say that we could go to a deflation, which is now worrying. He talked about the shilling stabilizing in the last few months, right? With a reserve of about 10 billion for the first time. Shilling oscillating between 128 and 130. Right? He spoke about the price of basic commodities going down, right? Price of fuel going down. But now my question is, why can't it translate to our pockets? Because Owino today, if you could buy a packet of unga last year at 230, and Kenyans were complaining they don't have money, but they could go and buy it. Right now, it's reduced to 150, but they can't buy it. They can't buy. And the president said that the microeconomics indicate positive trajectory. And they've not just been sitting and watching helplessly as adversity took over. But we're not seeing the money. How do we then start talking about money in our pockets? Because that's the most fundamental important thing to Kenyans.
First of all, this president took over in September 2022. So first of all, when we want to discuss as a family, as a country, we must first of all ask ourselves, where were we as at mid of 2022? As at mid of 2022, our debt burden was about 70% of the whole of our GDP. Equally, our debt allocation for repayment of debt was taking about close to over 50% of our tax revenues.
Actually, it was more.
Yes. So at that time, we were almost facing a cash crunch in the country. We could not be able even to disburse money to our counties on time. People were crying. The cost of unga was quite high. I think government during elections had even to come up with a subsidy to ensure that the price of unga was slightly low. So we can agree that as at the time that this government was coming into place, our economic situation, our economy was very, very, very bad. You remember, we had very heavy borrowing, especially between 2013 and 2022. And much of this borrowing went to mega projects, which maybe was not generating a lot of income. You remember when I just came in, I told you that in 1986, under the sessional paper number 1, we were warned that if we don't do something about where we are putting money to generate more money, then we are going to have a problem. And they had recommended that we put more money in agriculture and we put more money in the MSMEs. And I think that formed the basis of the president coming up with his manifesto, the pillars of agriculture, affordable housing, digital superhighway, what else? Health and the other pillars that had been put in by government. Now, so far, you remember when the president was coming in, when he was starting his statement, he said that democracy has empowered citizens to question, to keep asking questions so that they keep pace. And he's saying that in responding to much of these questions, number one, listening is very important for him, and it is the full occupation of leadership. So as you said, he started very well in looking at this. So what we can say is that one of the biggest challenges we had was Eurobond, as she had put it. You remember there was an Auditor General who had said that they could not even trace what that money had done. But all the same, when you take over government, you must take over responsibility. And that's why I'm saying, as a country and as a family, we need to come together, unite, discuss, and look at what is the best way forward for our country.
Okay.
Now, when you talk about money in people's pockets, a lot has happened. As much as government has put in money in agriculture, including fertilizer, which we was talking about. If you look at if you look at across the country, how many people are farming? How many people are earning out of those farms? Mm-hmm. You go to where we come from, especially, you find there are so many farms lying idle, and there are so many people who have migrated from rural areas to urban areas. So you'll find that even in a family, Elache may have some little money from her salary and her businesses. But if you look at the kind of weight she's carrying, in terms of brothers, cousins, people who have died, even that little money she has, if you project it nationally, it may seem to be reasonable. Yeah. But now when you bring it down to the lowest level, then you find majority of people don't have money in the pocket.
Okay.
So when you are calculating maybe a GDP, you look at maybe the total amount of money you have vis-a-vis maybe even the population. But you'll find that the majority of the people don't have money in their pockets. So it calls for another intelligent way of asking ourselves, how do we ensure that people have food on the table and have money on the pocket as individuals? And this calls for every individual working on something to ensure that he has money.
Are those figures real, Beatrice?
Two things, Ken. One, all of us tend to forget so much that post-COVID also is part of the consequences we are facing. Yes, we have debts. Then you realize we just closed for 2 years. Nobody was doing anything. Many people closed. The small entrepreneurs that normally hold the economics of scales for government in terms of the lower cadre, all of them closed. We've never had an opportunity, because of now the debts we have, to come up with a better economic stimulus package to revamp. You realize you have, when you look at the pending bills committee, they were able to say they have now verified, and we have 500 billion pending bills, and this is just national government. We have not even touched county.
Yeah.
And that is now where all the money is stuck that you would have seen revolving and circulating. And so what we need to think through, even as a country, and more importantly, government has to think through, how do we now come? And the budget committee in Parliament must also sit and ask itself, we have some funding, funds that are stuck here. We have 6 or 7, let's say the unclaimed asset fund, we have the policy insurance fund, all these funds. Is it possible to get 100 billion every year, revamp and start paying back people their pending bills in a manner that is clear, and that will now revamp back? Because when you pay, you find you'll pay in taxes, you'll have to now trade in back, and all those things. So we must be, we first, as a country, to accept there's something we did very wrong. The programs of the president are more social, so therefore there's no money that will jumpstart anything he would wish. Until you go back to the things of roads, infrastructure, is when again you'll see guys going for tenders and doing these things, then money starts circulating. So we have to look for a way to start paying these pending bills we are holding, the 500 billion, and just tell ourselves we must put our foot down, agree there's a crisis, but pay people these pending bills. Then now you'll see the economy growing. But the other thing we have to do as Parliament, I can see we have 6 bills in Parliament. All of them are dealing with taxes. Some of them are dealing with ensuring now pensions are not taxed. All those things. We have to bring in incentives to ensure, especially on these tax bills, that now it is going back to the people. And we have to now ask ourselves, even as we tax people the way we are doing, especially on the health, on all this, then register people so that even when you are deducting the money from the salaried people who are now feeling the pain, and that is the same people who would have grown the economy, then you must come up with an incentive on this salaried person and see how that tax is cautioned so that all the salaries do not just go back. It's like you work and you work back for government. But I'm hoping these bills are coming into caution. And then lastly, how do we ensure now we manage corruption? And that when we are doing a budget, you're able to say these big projects, money that will go, even the ones now you'll borrow, it comes specifically, if it is airport, let it go to the airport. Don't do the way counties are doing things, and that is why they are having challenges with the control of budget. And then they are saying there's no money. But the control of budget, what she has done, she's saying, come and tell me, you brought this when you were looking for the money. Now you have changed the goalpost. Why?
Okay, that's where the problem is. Mzalendo,
I think Ken...
Or you have something in your pocket, because I don't.
Yeah, I think we can paint a superfluous picture of how the economy is doing all we want. But the good thing about economies is that they speak for themselves. And the easiest way to determine how an economy is doing is by studying the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. It will tell you the truth. Today, if you walk into a supermarket or your regular shop with 1,000 shillings, the moment you buy one thing that costs 100, you start doubting if all the 10 hundreds are in that 1,000. It's already depleted. And that's what shows how the economy has beaten all Kenyans. And we cannot say that these things have come unto us from nowhere. They have descended upon us from the tax regime and those punitive taxes that have further dented our pay slips, making it difficult for us to even support those people who are maybe benefiting from us earning. So it becomes very difficult for you to even call in a hands person to do for you something. It's difficult for you to continue to call in your laundry person to wash for you clothes. You will struggle and wash the clothes yourself because you have no extra income for other things. And once you're doing that, that is the same day that Mama Fua sleeps hungry because you could not give them some work for the day. So if the government is very serious about elevating the status of Kenyans in their pockets, I think I totally agree with the sentiments from Mheshimiwa that incentivize this working class. You know, what does it have to? Because if you receive like a 2.5 decrease in your salary as a consequence of the new taxes, then what does that mean? If you extrapolate that for the entire working population, then you realize that these people are struggling a lot. And while they are struggling, there are some economies where taxation is even higher than here in Kenya. But the difference is those people that get taxed actually see what their tax does for them. Today in Kenya, we do everything on our own. If I fall sick, I take myself to hospital and pay the bills. If I have a child, I take them to school. I do literally everything. This is the only country where we expect nothing from government and we get nothing from government. So if these are the same people that you are beating with taxes right, left, and center, and you have had there's some more coming, they're not just done yet. So you ask yourself, if you do all these things, because these taxes, then they improve that macroeconomics that they are focusing on. And then they don't think about the leech that you bled to feed a heifer.
We have about 6 minutes. I'll give you, ladies and gentlemen, 2 minutes each to close for us.
Is okay.
Yes.
Sometimes when a mistake is made and the country is ours, we need to work together and rethink on how to solve our problems. He has said there's taxation and you cannot see why what the tax is doing. There's a background to it. The background is that we borrowed heavily and we used this money to undertake mega projects. 2022-2023 budget was ready in 2022 April. And what happened was that when this budget was ready in 2022 April, the projection was such that the deficit would be managed by borrowing of 1 trillion. And that is why when President Ruto came in, people started asking, how come he has come in and he's borrowing 1 trillion? No, it was not him borrowing 1 trillion. It was budget which had been prepared which was not his budget. What happened the following year in 2022, the 2023-2024 budget, because now our limit, our safe net was gone, there was need for us to start reducing borrowing. So he introduced taxation. When he introduced taxation, our projection was now to borrow 700 billion that year from 1 trillion which had been borrowed. There was a bit of noise, but it was passed. When it came to 2024-2025, what happened was that now our projection for borrowing had now come to 500 billion. That is what we were going to borrow, 300 to 500 billion. But there was a lot of noise and the budget was never passed. Yeah. And therefore, we have a deficit. And that is why government has come up with tax amendments, which now they are trying to look at which areas can we tax. For example, you find that they are introducing a taxation on digital platforms, like the people who are giving us Uber, who don't live in Kenya, but they are earning out of this money. The benefit is from the multinationals. Yes. And a number of issues. She talked about, like, for example, money flowing in counties. We have had a problem with division of revenue and allocation of revenue. Yes. There was even a problem, and many people cannot understand why the problem was there. The budget, just a minute, the budget was 27, the budget was 2.7 trillion, and county governments were to take, 2.9 trillion. County governments were to take 400 billion, and national government was to take 2.5 billion. When we had this problem, the money was reduced to 2.2 billion for government and to 380 billion for county government. So there was a stalemate. Yeah. And now a bill is coming in Parliament, which I hope she's going to pass, that is going to enable us that when there's stalemate, then we can go back and maybe give out money as the stalemate continues. So a number of good things are happening in government. Yeah. And I would just want to say that we need to be patient. Nobody is saying, don't point a finger at government. If you think we have democracy, and the president has put it very clearly, that democracy has enabled us to question, and he has a responsibility to listen. Yeah. We were in a deep ditch when we came in 2020, when this government came in 2022, September. And this deep ditch, we must agree as a country on how best we can up. Digging. But if we go and follow the sentiments of people who are looking for government, then we are going to be in trouble. I wish there was more time, but thank you so much.
Thank you. Very well explained. I have to say the time you've taken, the 7 minutes, very well explained. Beatrice.
Well, thank you. For me, one of the things I just need to say as a country, and I want us to project and look at the whole of Africa, what is happening. I'll tell you today in Burundi, there's no fuel and there's no foreign exchange. You can imagine where Burundi is headed. Yeah. The other day in Nigeria, fuel is 350 per liter, and their naira is just in another crazy place of 1,000 naira to the dollar.
They are producing fuel.
And yet they are the ones producing fuel. What am I trying to say? We are doing bad, yes, as a country, but we should thank God we have not gone to where these other countries are going, and we should not allow. The most important thing is we have learned our mistakes, and I'm hoping that in between it, all this, all of us leaders who citizens have given responsibility, that whatever tax you hold, and you're knowing very well, this is tax for a Kenyan who is sleeping hungry or who is going through turbulence with the family, do it right to make something good out of it. And let us just, the way the president said, within our means, let us just stay within that means and try. For those who are in government, and not now the president, those who have been taken and given responsibility and have agreed they want to work, then just do the right thing when you sit on that desk, knowing very well that this country, if we don't do that, we will end up going in the crisis these other countries are going in, which every Kenyan is saying, we cannot go down there, but we are saying, take care of our taxes and let us support government. We can criticize, but let us not put all the things, negativity until everyone wonders, when they land here, they're wondering, is it the same country we have from outside? What is wrong with Kenyans?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Beatrice.
But thank you, and God bless, and let us just pray for our country also.
Alenga.
Yeah, I think, Ken, for me, I would just end by saying Kenya is a very beautiful country. It's an amazing place to be. We are so resilient. Our economy has faced plunder from people over time and time again. There's been lots of money stolen right, left, and center, and we have never collapsed as an economy. So it means we have a better way to lead ourselves. We have a better way to line up our priorities. But more importantly, I think we must be a very honest nation. Yeah. We must start being very truthful. Yeah. Let's be truthful about our debt. How much did we borrow? How much have we paid? How much is remaining? When you clear those things, the common mwananchi rests assured that this we will finish. But we cannot have a debt that is always changing goalposts. It's ever increasing.
Today,
you can never explain it.
And then we wonder, what have we been doing? I thought we were paying it.
Exactly. Yes. Secondly, I think we need to be also truthful with our people. People are really suffering outside there to put a meal on the table. Very basic things. To get clean water, to take their children to school, very basic things. But if we still speak as though everything is fine because somebody brought us an Excel sheet and said the Kenya is doing well, we need to go back to the ground and see what are people saying, what are they feeling, and how can we bridge that gap between the rich and the poor. That's how we will get a good nation, where everybody feels the right and the full honor of being Kenyan.
The last time I sat with the president in an interview and I asked a question and I said, if this country falls, Mr. President, if your country falls, he looked at me and said, Ken, so which country do you come from?
Yeah, true.
Yeah? You, which country do you come from, Ken? At the end of the day, we are Kenya and Kenya is our business. Alenga Torosterdt, thank you so much. Governance and policy and governance expert, asante sana for coming tonight. Beatrice Elachi, Member of Parliament, we are looking at those bills with 2 eyes. We'll see what you do. At the 6.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we are looking at
we'll do the right thing.
We'll see what Parliament does.
We have contentious, we shall just
interrogate
agree.
These contracts like Owino said.
Oh, yes.
Who was about to push us in that ditch that the president saved us from, right?
Definitely.
And Charles Owino, thank you so much for coming. DJ, Government Communication Center. Asanteni sana for coming tonight. And as I let them go, the other story is making headlines. And this is a story that Owino would have weighed in, but the story about the impeached deputy president, but I see they put a different story, so I'll let you go. Because he said, but I need to ask you, what's happening? Who's after Rigathi Gachagua?
Again?
Yeah, yesterday he had a long tweet at the same time. He's being trained.
By cars.
But interestingly,
to his
village, to his lunch.
I was
very briefly. I really need to.
I think I was in this morning.
Yes,
I met with the Senator Muranga.
Yes,
and we were in a debate on Citizen TV.
Yes,
and somebody asked him, why can't the former deputy president report to police? Then he said, it's the police trailing him. Then I made a joke to myself and said, surely, now if it is the police trailing him and he can't report, then can he get an asylum?
You know, someone once told me on this show that you should not be running away from Subarus because they might actually be protecting you. I said, Ken, when you see, because I said I drive out of the gate, when I see a Subaru by the gate, I make sure I'm at 260. No, but, they might be saying, I really need to let you go, gentlemen.
Thank you.
I would comment on that, though.
Please, 30 seconds. Yeah. Or you would comment on it?
I won't comment.
Okay.